Our landscape is enhanced by trees. Trees in your boulevard, along the banks of the Zumbro, on the horizon as you drive Highway 52. They are such constant companions as to be unseen, whether in the winter with bare branches against snowy skies or in our almost spring with leaf buds just ready to burst forth. The verdant green of summer canopies offering welcome shade on a hot day, or the riotous golds and reds of autumn hillsides. This morning's chalice lighting provides another way for us to appreciate trees in a role reversal in which the tree provides instruction. The poem is by Ilan Shamir and is entitled Advice from a Tree. Dear friend, stand tall and proud. Sink your roots deeply into the earth. Reflect the light of a greater source. Think long term. Go out on a limb. Remember your place among living things. Embrace with joy the changing season, for each yields its own abundance. The energy and birth of spring, the growth and contentment of summer, the wisdom to let go of leaves in the fall, the rest and quiet renewal of winter. Feel the sun and the wind and delight in their presence. Look up at the moon that shines down upon you and the mystery of the stars at night. Seek nourishment from good things in life, simple pleasures, earth, fresh air, and light. Be content with your natural beauty. Drink plenty of water. Let your limbs sway and dance in the breezes. Be flexible. Remember your roots. Enjoy the view.
So it seemed to just pull off strip by strip or speck by speck, just centimeters at a time, like trying to get every speck off of an eggshell, off of a hard-boiled egg when it isn't peeling well. The wall that we were trying to clean and prep for painting must have had 4 or 5 or 40 layers of wallpaper, probably dating back to at least 1927 when the house was built. Spread over all those decades, it seemed like the layers just kept on coming. Some of you surely have done this, scraping off years of old wallpaper with a putty knife or one of the fancy circular scrapers or really frustrated fingernails. These walls covered in not so earth-friendly toxic glue that you just hope weren't too poisonous now that they were getting under your skin. These walls had been covered, infused over years with dust and dirt, and who knows what stories, lives, moments lived within them. But it felt like beyond the surface of just getting rid of dated wall coverings, we were clearing off the sticky dirt in search for something more authentic, something more true, something more lasting about the identity of this old house. To find beneath it, at least we hoped after all this work, something that could be restored, if not already beautiful, even if it had been covered in glue and paper over and over again. I grew up amidst the prairie, surrounded by farm fields and open sky, at least not too far in any direction from my home in Mankato. It was possible to move beyond the city lights, to enter onto those lonely country highways. Those were the roads that we took to relatives' homes all over southern Minnesota on the prairie, or on long bus rides with sports teams to Rochester from Mankato, when it was still the 2-lane the whole way, really rough days. There's a deep connection for many with the landscape, the climate, the terrain, the biome, particular water or trees or fields or dirt, the smell, the buildings, the streets, the lights. Whether it's out in a prairie field or it's in the middle of a big city, there's something in one's bones that reminds you where home is, or what feels like home. Land is so much about layers of memory. It's how we tell and retell the story of our people, our heritage, the same old jokes or the expected punchlines at the family holiday table, or tender or hard stories of loss or grief or loneliness. We are built by layers. We keep time by the stories we tell, the narratives we live out, the memories that come to vibrant life when we remind ourselves of each layer that connects us back generation to generation, of names remembered in loss, histories both spoken and forgotten, woven through time and space which make up the fabric of who we are, back to the dust of the earth and the bright blaze of the Big Bang which gave us birth. Many people speak of places, whether it's a home or it's a terrain, as having a core identity under all those layers of soil or paper. Like layers beneath our feet, sometimes these layers get in the way, covering something up on a wall, sticking to it so strongly we can't see beyond the surface. Do you ever feel like that yourself? That you are layered, not necessarily in the good natural layers of life and change and growth over days, years, a lifetime, but sometimes covered in layers like dated wallpaper, like paper and glue that seems toxic at times, trying to cover up something about the messiness of our lives, or feeling covered up by the expectations we have of ourselves or from another, expectations placed on us like layers and narratives of commercialism, of capitalism, trying to be a good sibling, spouse, parent, child, or trying to be productive, useful, helpful in the wider world, sometimes failing in some aspect of our life, at least by our own standards. Those layers of expectations can be put on thick, and you try to peel them away, scratch them away, but it seems sometimes it only leaves more of a mess, and you're just covered with glue. And when we can't find ourselves under all those layers, they obscure our radiant, shining soul within. And if we can't find ourselves, how can we find the radiant beauty of someone else? Theologian Richard Rohr speaks of the massive mistake that was made across religious traditions in early histories, the clear separation between the sacred and the profane, the places that were considered holy and the places that were not. This dichotomy, this idea became embodied literally in Greek and Western culture as a separation between the soul and the flesh, things of the spirit and things of this world. That the soul, that hidden part deep within us that had any goodness in it, was often covered by layers and layers of dogmatic teachings of a sin-soaked evil flesh. But there were counter-traditions to that from the beginning. The ancients believed something quite different, peeling back those layers and diving deeper beyond the surface of traditions which treated creation as a commodity. There is something more authentic, just a little deeper down. This is about creativity, and it's found in some of the oldest creation stories. In the Jewish tradition, the sacred aspect of humanity or the soul comes from the Hebrew word nephesh, which means breath or air or life. So in the story in Genesis, God breathed into humanity, into the dust and the dirt of earth, and through breath and breathing created life. The soul, the very breath and bone and blood of a person in that tradition, is infused, made out of the air of the holy. In Gnostic traditions and carried in new ways in the Quaker tradition, the indwelling of the holy in humans was spoken of the spark of the divine, the inner light, that of God or the Spirit in every person, or the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Mystic Hildegard wrote about the divine essence in the natural world itself, talking about the Spirit in these words: I am that supreme and fiery force that sends forth all the sparks of life. I am that living essence of the divine substance that flows in the beauty of the fields. I shine in the water. I burn in the sun and the moon and the stars. Mine is the mysterious force of the invisible wind. I am life. There's another creation story that I love from a modern poet as part of her coming-of-age credo, which is a Unitarian Universalist rite of passage. She said at the age of 14, I exist on this little blue island of a planet in the middle of a solar system, spinning in a galaxy, moving through a universe that is forever expanding, does that make you want to sing too? The pulse of the universe, she writes, and the beat of my heart courses through my being and your being, and we are being in this moment here, just for a second, together. Does that make you want to sing too, she says. Our earth, our natural world, has been over centuries and millennia, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes with clear lack of attention, covered, layered over. The shining beauty of clean water, green leaves, bright blue skies has been layered over again and again, with greed and production, with a separation of what is sacred and what is not, and one of the most sacred things in so many traditions, the dust and dirt of earth, has been systematically used by religion, by culture, by commerce, by indifference, not as holy ground, but as just some pile of dirt. We have a bad track record when it comes to taking care of the earth as a species. Long ago, a misunderstood biblical passage from that same creation story in Genesis falsely framed the relationship between humanity and the earth as one of domination and misuse. But what early Jewish theologians understood was that it was a calling to relationship, that humanity was made out of the earth. There was no separation. Called to be careful stewards of the land and its resources, to understand that we are part of the interdependent web, to care for the well-being of earth. But in the name of progress and civilization, driven by greed and the blaze of the Industrial Revolution, which brought us many wonderful things, also brought a high cost to the natural world. And then it was blown out of imaginal possibility with corporate profit and the need to acquire and grow and expand. It becomes easy to just level the earth in front of someone or in front of some progress when it means a more comfortable life. Too often throughout human history, we've taken the easy road. In our wanting to discern between right and wrong, in our attempts to categorize and understand the world, we place layers of separation through commerce, religion, culture, between us and the natural world. Physical and mental barriers and layers that separate us from the land and separate us from one another. There can be something beautiful and playful and engaging on a screen, but it often obscures our senses. So that we neglect to notice something of sacred worth right in front of us in this moment right now. And I have to note, as a millennial, I don't believe the problem is modern technology. I can't just put all the blame on the iPhone or the smartphone or whatever it is. This problem is as old as humanity, of placing something, whether it's a screen or whether it's profit, something about greed or self-centeredness or indifference or apathy between us and the rest of the world, some barrier. And over time, without really noticing, we're layered. And it takes someone else breaking through or our own moment of realization from within to put down our devices or put down our defenses, to blink our eyes, focus a little bit, and notice what's right in front of us. Like the separation between the sacred and the profane, there is an assumed separation also, it seems, maybe among religious liberals in particular, between nature and industry, or nature and even a city. There is assumption about where one can connect with something peaceful, that nature walks outside of the city limits are intrinsically more spiritual, or that time spent within a concrete jungle is somehow worse or deficient. We go to rest in the peace of wild things, writes Wendell Berry. And there is truth to that. There is something about being in a different place that seems wild, untamed, untrampled, that feels like we are peeling back layers, finding something more authentic, more true. And I fully agree, we need more green space, and we need places that are untouched and protected as wetlands, as forests, lest we regularly and always just pave paradise and put up a parking lot. But at the same time, human is not synonymous with bad. Creation and making and invention are not synonymous with evil. There are places and moments where we can feel something and experience something wild in the middle of the city, this piece of wild things. For example, just yesterday afternoon, I was walking along 16th Street, stumbling out of our home as if we had been in a cave for 8 months, blinking our eyes, unsure of that fireball in the sky, what that was, or this feel of warmth on our skin. Very strange. But there on the corner of Mayo Wood and 16th Street was a wild turkey. Some folks at 9 o'clock saw it, maybe some of you saw it. It was just kind of strutting its stuff right on the corner there by the waters on the sign next to the traffic light. I think it assumed that all those cars were just coming by to observe its beauty, and they kind of were, and so were we as we walked by. As we got closer, it kind of stylishly moved to the other side of the sign, slightly afraid of us, as the kids were yelling, "Turkey!" And then we moved across and over. It came back around. A half hour later when we came back, it was still there enjoying this line of adoring cars. It was something wild. It caught everyone's attention. It was something that felt untampered, wild, free, unbound, unfenced, like it had broken out of the layers that were all around it of concrete and metal and traffic and said, "I'm here." Something wild, something beautiful, right in the middle of everything. "Found your hope on the ground under your feet," writes Wendell Berry. "Your hope of heaven, let it rest on the ground that is right underfoot." As much as there is beauty in fleeing to protected natural wild habitats, there can also be something beautiful, heavenly, something wild and lovely on whatever ground is right under your feet, even if it's concrete. It reminds me of playing with a young child, a classic game of hide and seek. And there is this time in child development where the lines between permanence and impermanence are thin, but also where the point of the game is much less concerned with logic and rules, sometimes to the dismay of the adults playing. But maybe you've experienced this. A child says, "Let's play hide and seek." And you say, "Okay," and you close your eyes, you go to another space, and you count till whatever they tell you to count to, until you say, "Ready or not, here I come." And you open your eyes and you look around. It only takes a few seconds until you realize that right in the middle of the living room is an upright, toddler-shaped thing under a blanket. And you go, let's see, trying to pass through all your adult logic and into perhaps a more authentic point of playing the game. "I wonder where she is," you say, walking right next to this 3-foot upright shape in the middle of the room that is now softly giggling under the blanket. And out of nowhere, she pulls the blanket off and says, "I'm right here." And for a brief moment, you think to yourself, you clearly don't understand the point of this game. But then you remember this is the point of the game. The point of play, the point of being in relationship, is to laugh at the notion that something so simple could separate us, that something so simple could obscure our senses and cause us not to notice our beloved right there, to not notice something of meaning, something of beauty, hiding in plain sight right in the middle of the living room. It's just silly to think that that could separate us. Sometimes it is as simple as one layer of woven thread over the head of a toddler in a living room. Sometimes it's as complex or as crusted over or as rigid, solidified as layers and layers and layers of wallpaper over decades filled with dust and dirt. And sometimes it takes just a moment for something beautiful and wild to spring up and shout, "I'm right here." And you uncover beauty and laughter and joy right in the middle of everything. To love the earth begins with simply being in relationship, simply noticing what is already around us everywhere we are. And so the next time the traffic light turns and you are forced to slow down, maybe think of it as a spiritual reminder to center to the soul, to take a breath, to then just look out the window, because you might see a wild turkey on the corner of Mailwood and 16th in all its beauty, right in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, just strutting down the sidewalk. The closing hymn is "Love Will Guide Us." I invite you to rise in body or spirit. I invite you, as you're comfortable, to grab a hand next to you or a shoulder, or place your hand on your heart. And breathe deep the breath of life. There is sacred soil right under your feet. It doesn't stop at any border. It goes everywhere, and it includes you. Pause, breathe, look out the window of your heart. There's beauty waiting, and it starts within. May it be so. Amen.